Marcus Thorne had signed billion-dollar contracts without his hand trembling once. He'd faced hostile takeovers, board rebellions, and market crashes with ice in his veins. But standing in the marble corridor of the family court building on a gray Tuesday morning, watching his soon-to-be ex-wife walk through the entrance, he felt something crack inside his chest. It wasn't seeing Elena after 6 months of separation that stopped his breath. It was the two small figures clutching her hands. Two identical boys with dark curls, and eyes the exact shade of his own stared back at him from across the hallway. They couldn't have been more than 4 years old. His mind raced through impossible calculations. He'd left Elena 3 years ago when she'd told him she was pregnant. Walked out because he'd been too consumed with building his empire to make room for a child. He'd signed the divorce papers she'd sent and threw himself deeper into work, using 18-hour days to silence the whisper of regret that followed him everywhere. But 2 children? Twins? The folder in his lawyer's hand suddenly weighed nothing. The carefully prepared statements about asset division and settlement terms scattered from his thoughts like dust. One of the boys, the one wearing a blue superhero shirt, noticed Marcus staring and half hid behind Elena's leg. The other, bolder in red stripes, kept his gaze steady with an expression Marcus recognized from his own reflection. Stubborn, assessing, unwilling to look away first. Marcus. Elena's voice carried across the space between them. Quiet but clear. She looked different. Tired, yes, with shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before. But there was something else, too, a strength that seemed to radiate from her core, a resilience he'd been too blind to see when they were together. We should talk before we go in. His lawyer, Patricia Chen, touched his elbow. Mr. Thorne, we're expected in courtroom 4B in 15 minutes. Whatever this is, give me a moment. Marcus heard his own voice from somewhere distant. His feet carried him forward before his brain caught up, closing the space between him and the family he'd abandoned. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. The boy in blue had his mother's gentle mouth, but his father's determined chin. The one in red had Elena's high cheekbones and Marcus's straight nose. Their names are Lucas and Leo, Elena said softly. They're 3.5. And before you ask, yes, they're yours. Both of them. Lucas peeked out from behind Elena's leg again. Mama, who's that? The question landed like a physical blow. Marcus dropped to one knee without thinking, bringing himself level with the children. This close, he could see Leo had a small scar above his left eyebrow. Lucas wore a homemade friendship bracelet around his tiny wrist. These were details, specific, real, evidence of lives lived entirely without him. His voice caught. What was he, a father? He'd surrendered that title before they were born. I'm Marcus. He's an old friend, Elena interjected gently. Come on, boys. Let's go sit on that bench. But as she tried to guide them away, Leo tugged free and stepped closer to Marcus. The boy reached out one small hand and pressed it against Marcus's cheek with the fearless curiosity of childhood. You're crying, Leo announced with the blunt honesty of a 3-year-old. Marcus raised his hand to his face, surprised to find it wet. When had that happened? He'd built walls around his emotions so high and thick he'd forgotten what it felt like when they crumbled. I'm sorry, he whispered, though he wasn't sure if he was apologizing to Leo or Elena or the universe itself. Elena ushered the boys to a nearby bench with a quiet promise of juice boxes from her bag, then returned to stand before Marcus, who had risen but remained rooted to the spot. Around them, other families and lawyers streamed past, caught up in their own dramas, oblivious to the earthquake happening in his chest. You didn't tell me, he managed. You left before the ultrasound that showed twins, Elena replied, her voice steady but not unkind. And when you signed the divorce papers without a single question, without asking about your child, I decided you'd made your choice clear. I wasn't going to force you to be a father. Children deserve better than obligation. I would have, he stopped. What would he have done? Come back? Made room in his meticulously structured life? He'd been so certain that success required sacrifice, that building something meaningful in business meant surrendering personal connections. His own father had taught him that, living at the office while Marcus grew up with nannies and boarding schools. I was wrong, he said, the words emerging rough and unpracticed. About everything. I thought I was protecting them, protecting you from who I was, from becoming my father. But I just became him anyway. Absent, missing the only things that actually matter. Elena studied him for a long moment. Behind her, Lucas was showing Leo some kind of hand-clapping game, their laughter bright against the courthouse's gray formality. I didn't bring them to hurt you, she finally said. I brought them because my babysitter got sick and I couldn't miss this hearing. The settlement you're offering, it's generous. Too generous. But it's also money for them, for their future. And I can't let pride get in the way of their security. I don't want to settle, Marcus heard himself say. I want to go back. He stopped, forcing himself to be honest. I know I can't go back. But maybe if you'd let me, I could go forward differently. Patricia appeared at his shoulder again, more insistent now. Marcus, the judge won't wait. He looked at his lawyer, then at the courtroom doors, then back at Elena and the boys. In that moment, the choice crystallized with perfect clarity. He'd spent 3 years building Thorne Industries into one of the most successful tech companies in the nation. He'd sacrificed sleep, health, relationships, everything at the altar of achievement. And standing here, watching his sons play together on a courthouse bench, he couldn't remember a single meeting or deal that had made him feel the way. Leo's hand on his cheek had. Tell the judge I'm withdrawing the petition, he said quietly. I'm not ending my marriage. I'm fighting for it. Patricia's eyes widened. Marcus, you can't be serious. The assets alone? I'm serious. He turned to Elena, his heart hammering. I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I abandoned you when you needed me most. But if you'll let me, I want to meet my sons. Really meet them. I want to learn who they are. And maybe eventually, if I can prove that I've changed, that I'm changing, you might consider letting me be part of their lives. Part of your life. Elena's eyes glistened. You can't just walk back in, Marcus. You can't just decide you're ready and expect everything to fall into place. I know. He took a careful step closer. So I'm not asking you to make that decision today. I'm asking if you'd let me take you and the boys to lunch. Just lunch, and maybe next week a park visit. I want to earn this, Elena. I want to earn them, however long it takes. A tear slipped down her cheek. They ask about you sometimes. I showed them pictures, told them their father was very busy with important work. Lucas, he's the sensitive one. He worries you didn't want him because he's not important enough. The words shattered something in Marcus that money could never fix. He thought of all the nights he'd worked until dawn, all the weekends sacrificed, building an empire that suddenly seemed hollow. What was the point of success if the people you loved believed they weren't worthy of your time? Can I tell him something? Marcus asked quietly. Elena hesitated, then nodded. They walked together to the bench where Lucas was now drawing on a small notepad with crayons Elena had produced from her seemingly bottomless bag. The boy looked up warily as they approached. Marcus knelt again, bringing himself to Lucas's level. Your mom told me you think I didn't come around because you're not important. But that's not true at all. I stayed away because I was scared and stupid. And those are grown-up problems that had nothing to do with how amazing you are. And now that I've met you, now that I see how brave and kind you are, I'd like to know if maybe I could have lunch with you and your brother. Would that be okay? Lucas studied him with those heartbreaking, familiar eyes. Then, slowly, he nodded. Can we have pizza? Marcus felt his throat tighten again. Anything you want. As they walked out of the courthouse together, not as a family yet, but as the beginning of something healing, Marcus realized that this was the deal of his lifetime, not the merger that had made headlines or the innovation that had changed the industry, but this fragile chance to become the father his sons deserved and the partner Elena had needed 3 years ago.